China and Japan, Lesson 9. Here you will see pictured the Great Wall of China, and contrary to popular belief, the Great Wall is not visible from the moon. On the right you'll see a picture of a geisha. Geishas are Japanese hostesses and are trained to entertain with conversation, dance, and song. As you move through Lesson 9, China and Japan, please follow along on your guide. At this point, please pause this video and pull up the website listed on your follow along guide. You will be watching some information about the Great Wall of China. Please pull up this clip, watch it, answer the questions in the box, and then return to this lesson 9 and push play to continue. Great. Now that you've learned a little bit about the Great Wall, please write a hashtag on your follow along guide under the picture of the Great Wall using the information that you learned in the video clip. China's location. China is located in Eastern Asia. There are many physical features that have served as barriers that have isolated China from the rest of Asia. Those physical features include the mountains, the Himalaya mountains, the plateau of Tibet, rivers, and the ocean. The capital of China is Beijing. Another physical feature is the Yellow River, or the Huanghe River. China's population is greater than 1.3 billion, and you can see here in the comparison of the United States and China just how much bigger, population-wise, China is than the United States. China has a written language that includes ideograms. Ideograms are symbols that differ from our own language. Our written language, we have characters that represent sounds. We put characters together, blend the sounds to make words. We string the words together to make sentences to complete thoughts. Ideograms are different. They are symbols that can mean concepts and ideas. Chinese is a tonal language. You can say the same thing but change the tone of your voice and it changes the meaning of what you're saying. Chinese religions. Buddhism's overall belief is that suffering occurs in life, which is natural and is due to attachment. Attachment could be to anything. It could be to material things, people, or vices. Attachment can be overcome by following a certain path. The goal of Buddhism is to achieve nirvana, and that is letting go of hatred and ignorance and acceptance of imperfection. You achieve nirvana by following the Eightfold Path, according to the Four Noble Truths. This is a common religion in China. Taoism is another common religion. Tao is the way, and it is relative to good and evil. The idea is in order to understand what good is, you must have an idea or an understanding of what the concept of evil is, which makes sense. Here you see the yin-yang sign, and some of you are familiar with this. You read the yin-yang on the outside. As you travel around the circle, you'll notice that the light is small, and as it decreases, the dark gets bigger, and the dark represents the opposite of the light. The yin and the yang can mean anything. The yin could be negative, and the opposite of negative is positive. As you travel around the yin-yang, you'll notice as one increases, the other decreases. The dot in the middle means that as it is at its fullest, its biggest increase, there is always an element of the other. Female and male, which are opposites, also are a good example. Dark and light, evil and good, earth and heaven. Confucianism is not a Chinese religion, but rather a school of thought. And Confucius was a wanderer. He was a man who was full of wisdom. He would wander around and he had followers. And he would travel and have thoughts, and he would say things, and his followers would write everything down. These are called the Analects. Confucius's Analects were written by other people, his followers, and so they would write Confucius say in whatever he wrote. So here you see a couple examples. In the Analects you would see Confucius say, forget injuries, never forget kindnesses. These are kind of like the African proverbs that we've talked about. They are meant to teach life lessons. Confucius say, respect yourself and others will respect you. Confucius say, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Think about each one of these and what they might mean to you. If you've ever heard a Confucius joke, you will notice that they all begin with Confucius say. Really has a little bit of historical relevance because the Analects were written the same way. Now, Chinese government. Xi Jinping is the current president of the Communist state of China. China got into a bit of trouble with its population because Mao Zedong, who was the first communist leader of the country, encouraged the Chinese to have lots of children. His idea was that he would create a large Chinese communist state that would run the world or take over, be a big superpower in our world. Now, the problem with this is that the Chinese population grew too quickly. Its resources could not sustain the population growth. As a result, Mao Zedong enacted a policy of 1 child per couple. Demographers told him it would not be a great idea. The problem is that people valued male babies more than female babies. As a result, male children were more valued because they could carry on the family business. Also, they would stay and take care of their parents and grandparents as they aged. You see, when a female marries, she leaves her parents' home and lives with her husband and his family. So to have a female baby eventually would not be a good thing because your female daughter would leave you to marry, and you would be left with nobody at home to help you either on the farm or in the business or to take care of you as you aged. Now, the other problem with this is because that male children were valued more, female children were discarded. Forced abortions or simply abandoning a child out in an alley or at an orphanage were common. In fact, when people adopt babies from China, oftentimes they take girls because girls are the only ones available because they are unwanted. Now, the 4-2-1 phenomenon works like this and is a result of this Chinese 1 child per couple policy, which although now those restrictions have been eased, people still, because it's become a part of the culture, have chosen or choose oftentimes just to have 1 child. The 4-2-1 phenomenon works like this. Because elders are very important in Chinese culture, you don't send grandma and grandpa to the nursing home as they age. Grandma and grandpa do not leave, as your parents do not leave either. They live within your home, and it is your job as the child to take care of your parents. Now, the problem with a 1-child family is that you have 1 child who is trying to take care of both of their parents, which is the 2, and potentially 2 sets of grandparents. This becomes kind of impossible, especially financially. It's a huge burden on the child to try to take care of 6 elderly, aging, either parents or grandparents. Forced urbanization. Forced urbanization was talked about when we read the reading about China and how its government is forcing people out of the rural areas and into the cities. Please write what you know about forced urbanization. Government type you should write communist, and current leader is at the top. Most people in China speak Chinese or Mandarin. Japan. At this point, you should, at the top of your follow-along guide, type in the YouTube video to watch about Japan. Please pause Lesson 9, go watch the video about Japan, and answer the questions. You will go approximately halfway down the follow-along guide, just below examples of seismic activity in Japan. At that point, you will come back to this video and begin playing it. Please pause it now, go to the video, watch it, and come back. Great. Now that you're done, let's continue on with our information about Japan. Japan's capital city is Tokyo. Tokyo is very lively and loud. Tokyo is a very safe city. Japanese people in general have something that maybe Americans lack, and that's called social responsibility. The crime rate is relatively low because it's a part of their society. Committing crimes, stealing things would bring dishonor and shame upon your family and your name, your family name. And so Japanese people oftentimes make decisions based on the good of the society, not what's best for me. So for example, somebody leaves an iPhone or a cell phone down in the commons area here at school, and 10 minutes later, they remember that they have left that phone down in the commons area. They quickly go back to retrieve their phone. Do you think their phone is still there? Probably not. Probably somebody has taken that phone. They have stolen it as their own and will do whatever they wish with it. In Japan, you could have the same thing happen, but let's take it outside of a school. Let's take it out on a street. You leave your phone on a park bench. Come back an hour later, your phone will still be there. That's because nobody took the phone because of social responsibility. Yes, it would be a selfish act to take the phone and sell it for your own personal gain, but that does not better society. That's not a good decision ethically or morally. And so the Chinese people would not make that choice and would not steal the phone. Now, other important cities in Japan relative to U.S. history would be Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that is because the United States dropped the atomic bombs on these cities to end the war in the East during World War II. Japan, as we've talked about in class, like much of Asia, doesn't have a ton of arable land. Japan in particular is very mountainous, and so the people are kind of forced to live in these cities. We talked about high-rise apartments and how that's more popular. When you run out of room, you build up, you don't spread out. And so because the population density is so high, people oftentimes might not have cars but might walk or ride bikes or motorbikes. Now, just how much of the land is arable or usable, and that would be only 13%. Japanese religion, Shinto. Shinto is the idea that all human life and nature is sacred. This is an ancient religion that started about 500 BC. There is no founder, no written scripture, and is loosely organized, surrounding deities or gods or goddesses, the chief deity being the sun goddess. Ancestor worship is also common, and this is not worshiping your ancestors religiously. However, it is revering your ancestors, asking them for help and advice. The main religions in Japan are Shinto and Buddhism. Japanese Zen gardens are rock gardens that have been around for over 1,000 years. They are part of the natural beauty of Japan and come from the symbolic expression of the religious beliefs of Buddhism and Shinto. There are several varieties of Japanese Zen gardens, and perhaps you've seen one in a doctor's office, a mini one that sits on a table. They are supposed to be calming and relaxing. Makes sense if your dentist has one out on the table, you might not be super relaxed or calm if you're getting ready to go in for dental work. Japanese government type is parliamentary government with constitutional monarchy. Most people speak Japanese, and there are 3 alphabets. Talk about confusing. The Japanese flag, the circle in the middle, represents the sun. Makes sense if the sun goddess is the chief deity. Japan's name translates to land of the rising sun. The white represents honesty and purity, and the red disk is the sun, symbolizing brightness, sincerity, and warmth. At the bottom, make sure that you fill in the caption for the geisha, about who geisha are, and also at the bottom, why the crime rate is so low in Japan. Thank you, and this concludes Lesson 9.